And here it is, a one-of-a-kind Bugatti Chiron interior. When Alex showed me the design of this, I wasn't too sure. But now that I've seen it in person, this is definitely going to stand out and be so unique. I love it. All the interior is stripped out of the Bugatti Chiron, and it's all down here, and we're giving it now to Matt at E3 Customs to go crazy with it. Now, all of this interior was black leather, black Alcantara, and some bits of bronze in it, and this whole thing is about to change.
The leather weakening was done with a knife tool, now we'll do it with a laser.
And that's exactly how we're gonna do it. Matt designs the stencil on the computer, and then the laser tool burns out a weakening spot into the leather that's gonna be used on the dashboard.
What you're looking at isn't just an interior, it's a contradiction made physical. By every conventional rule that governs hypercar ownership, restoration, and control, this interior should not exist. Not in this form, not with these materials, and certainly not assembled outside the ecosystem that originally produced the car. The purple and white split leather alone breaks expectation, but it's only the surface layer of something far more complex. Beneath it sits a network of reconstructed systems, reverse-engineered safety components, and decisions that were never supposed to be available to independent builders. Every visible detail carries an invisible backstory of limitation. Components destroyed in a violent crash, parts locked behind manufacturer control, systems designed with the assumption that only one network in the world would ever be allowed to restore them. And yet, piece by piece, that assumption was challenged. What emerged is not simply a repaired cabin, but a redefined one, an interior that exists because a series of people chose not to accept the boundaries placed around it. To understand why this matters, you have to begin with what was left after the crash. Not damage in the conventional sense, not worn materials or cosmetic issues, but a complete structural failure of the interior as a system. The passenger airbag had deployed with force, tearing open the dashboard along lines engineered to fail in a controlled manner. The steering wheel airbag had detonated, leaving behind a ruptured housing. Knee airbags had fired, seatbelt pretensioners had locked and discharged, and the leather surfaces that once defined the cabin had split apart at precisely the points they were designed to under impact stress. This wasn't an interior waiting to be repaired. It was an interior that had already completed its purpose and, in doing so, erased itself. In the logic of modern automotive engineering, these systems are single-use by design. Once deployed, they are not meant to be reassembled casually. They are replaced entirely, reset within controlled environments, or written off as part of a larger insurance-driven process. The expectation is clear. Restoration at this level is not independent work. It is manufacturer-controlled reconstruction. That expectation comes with a process, and the process comes with conditions. Official replacement parts sourced exclusively through authorized channels. Repairs carried out in facilities approved by the manufacturer. Timelines dictated not by urgency, but by availability and internal logistics. Costs that reflect not just the complexity of the vehicle, but the exclusivity of access. In most cases, owners accept this because there is no alternative. The system is designed to ensure there isn't one. And in this case, that system had already demonstrated its limits. Parts were not being supplied, access was restricted, the pathway that should have enabled a conventional rebuild was effectively closed. That's the moment where most projects stop. Not because the work is impossible, but because the route to completing it has been removed. But stopping was never part of this story. Instead of working within the boundaries that had been set, the decision was made to step outside them entirely. Not recklessly, not blindly, but with a different kind of logic. One that focuses less on procedure and more on understanding. Rather than asking what the manufacturer allows, the question became, what does the system actually require to function? That shift in perspective is subtle, but it changes everything. Because once you move from following instructions to understanding principles, new solutions start to appear. Not shortcuts, not compromises, but alternative pathways built on the same engineering fundamentals. This is where the rebuild begins to take on a different shape and where the people involved become as important as the components themselves. Because no single person could have carried this out alone. it required a convergence of skill sets that rarely intersect at this level. At the center of it is Matt Armstrong, not acting as a traditional mechanic, but as an investigator of systems. His role wasn't just to rebuild, but to decode, to look at part numbers, cross-reference components, identify patterns between manufacturers, and determine where compatibility existed beneath branding. He approached the car not as a fixed product, but as a collection of engineered solutions that could, if understood correctly, be replicated or adapted.
So the leather on top of the airbag has some weakening points, which you can't see from outside. That's quite important here. You don't see it, and it needs to be like that also in all kinds of temperature conditions and over the long run of the car's life.
Then there is the craftsmanship layer, brought in through E3 Customs. Their role was to take what remained, damaged panels, stripped interiors, exposed structures, and translate a concept into something tangible. Leatherwork at this level isn't just about covering surfaces, it's about structure, tension, durability, and precision. Every stitch, every cut, every seam has to align not just visually, but mechanically with the underlying components. They weren't restoring what had been there before. They were creating something that had never existed, while still respecting the constraints of the car's design. And then there's Tony, whose contribution might seem less technical, but is no less critical. In a project filled with complexity and ambition, having someone who can step back and respond honestly is invaluable. His reaction to the finished interior, acknowledging its quality while admitting it wasn't to his personal taste, anchors the project in reality. It reminds everyone involved that this isn't about universal approval. It's about executing a vision correctly, even if that vision challenges conventional preferences. Before any of that visual transformation could take place, however, the most critical layer had to be addressed: the safety system. Because no matter how impressive the design, none of it matters if the underlying systems don't function as intended. Airbags, pretensioners, deployment mechanisms, these are not cosmetic elements. They are engineered responses to extreme conditions, designed to operate within milliseconds. Rebuilding them isn't about making them look correct. It's about ensuring they behave exactly as they should under pressure. What makes this part of the story so compelling is that there was no single solution. Each component required a different approach, depending on what information could be extracted and what resources were available. The passenger airbag, for example, revealed its origin through its part number. Strip away the branding prefix, and what remains is a reference that points directly to another manufacturer. In this case, an Audi component, identical in function, identical in design, hidden in plain sight behind a different badge. That discovery transforms the problem instantly. What was once inaccessible becomes available. What was once exclusive becomes interchangeable. But installing the airbag is only part of the equation. The cover that conceals it, the panel designed to tear open under precise conditions, represents a different challenge entirely. Its behavior is engineered through invisible modifications. Weakening points cut into the material at exact depths and locations. Without those, the airbag either fails to deploy correctly or causes unintended damage. Recreating that without access to original specifications requires a different kind of skill: measurement, observation, and iteration. Understanding not just what the panel looks like, but how it behaves under stress. Using tools like laser cutting to replicate those internal structures with enough accuracy that the system functions as intended. It's not imitation. It's reconstruction through understanding. The same pattern repeats across the rest of the system. A steering wheel component traced back to an entirely different manufacturer. Knee airbags restored through specialist services that reset rather than replace. Each solution unique, each one tailored to the specific constraints of the component in question. When viewed individually, they seem like isolated fixes. When viewed together, they form a complete system, one that operates as intended despite being assembled through entirely unconventional means.
All the interior is stripped out of the Bugatti Chiron, and it's all down here, and we're giving it now to Matt at E3 Customs to go crazy with it. Now all of this interior was black leather, black Alcantara, and some bits of bronze in it. And this whole thing is about to change.
The leather weakening was done with a knife tool, now we'll do it with a laser.
And that's exactly how we're gonna do it. Matt designs the stencil on the computer, and then the laser tool burns out a weakening spot into the leather that's gonna be used on the dashboard.
Once that foundation is secure, the project shifts. The tension moves from function to form, from necessity to expression. This is where the owner's vision begins to take precedence. The decision to move toward a purple and white interior isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a statement of intent. It signals that this rebuild is not about returning the car to its original state, but about redefining it. That decision introduces uncertainty. Even within the team, there are doubts. But those doubts are part of the process. They create friction, and that friction forces clarity. Execution at this stage requires precision of a different kind. Materials are selected not just for appearance, but for how they interact with light, texture, and existing elements within the car. Patterns are designed digitally, tested physically, adjusted repeatedly. Laser-cut stencils allow for details that would be impossible to achieve by hand. Layers of leather are built up, stripped back, reassembled. Components that once existed in uniform black are now reimagined in contrasting tones that must still feel cohesive. It's not enough for the interior to stand out. It has to make sense as a complete environment. What emerges is something that feels intentional. Not modified, not improvised, but designed. The purple and white elements don't compete with each other, they balance. The retained accents from the original interior don't clash, they integrate. The result is a space that feels like it belongs, even though nothing about it follows the original blueprint. And then there's the final detail, the one that ties everything together. The headrest. A small area, but one that carries symbolic weight. Without the option to use the original branding, the space becomes open to interpretation. What replaces it isn't just decoration, it's a message, a quiet acknowledgement of everything that has happened throughout the build.
And here it is, a one-of-a-kind Bugatti Chiron interior. When Alex showed me the design of this, I wasn't too sure. But now that I've seen it in person, this is definitely going to stand out and be so unique. I love it.
A reminder that what was once considered impossible now exists, not as theory, but as reality. This is what the interior ultimately represents. Not just craftsmanship, not just creativity, but a shift in how these cars are understood. It doesn't diminish the engineering that went into the original vehicle. If anything, it highlights it. Because understanding a system well enough to recreate it independently requires a deep respect for how it was designed in the first place. What it does challenge is the idea that such understanding must remain confined within a single network. Every component in this interior tells that story. From the reconstructed safety systems to the custom leatherwork, from the cross-referenced parts to the independently developed solutions. It's all evidence of what happens when knowledge is applied without restriction, when capability is allowed to operate outside predefined boundaries. And that's why this interior matters. Not because it looks different, but because it exists at all. Because it proves that the limits placed around these systems are not always technical. Sometimes they're structural. And when those structures are bypassed, not recklessly, but intelligently, the results speak for themselves.